This is Bill McMinn from Makeable Bible Church, and this is the Way to Go podcast, where we talk about faith, family, and daily life, putting the Bible into practical, everyday terms. Welcome to the Way to Go podcast. I'm Bill McMinn, along with Bethany Barthel, talking about emotions, actually. And we had one podcast prior where we talked about some of these things, and you're sharing about you're a kindergarten teacher, teaching kindergarten kids about, hey, let's hang out in the circle of control here. We can't control what other people are doing or saying to us, but we can control our reaction, right? So our response, our responsibility. And sometimes you got to hit the pause button. We talked about that.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Talked about sometimes we're frustrated because we have blocked goals, a lot of anger between the left ear and the right ear. But there's some other things too I want to talk about when it comes to just our feelings and our emotions. Obviously, we're emotional beings. We're intended to be emotional beings. I don't think there's anything wrong. I had a great conversation with somebody the other day about this, and they said, hey, you can't tell somebody not to feel something. Let's say if somebody's gone through a significant loss.
Yeah.
You can't say to them, well, I don't think you should feel sad. Or you shouldn't feel sad anymore, because what they feel is what they feel. And it's just dealing with it and acknowledging what our emotions are and then moving on. Now, that was one thing you were talking about with your class, was just the acknowledgement of emotions. Why do you think that's important? Are we talking about acknowledgement of what emotion you're feeling? Go ahead and talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I think just naming the emotion. We have these emotion cards, and they have pictures on them and the word underneath them. And sometimes we think that we feel angry, and we don't actually. So when we're feeling angry and we're responding in anger, and then we reevaluate and think, I'm just feeling actually disappointed.
Right.
Okay, why do you feel disappointed? And just naming that emotion just calms you down. And you might feel angry, and that's okay. And then we have, okay, how do we appropriately respond in that anger and deal with it and move on? But just naming that emotion almost just takes the power of the response, of just the reactive response, away from us, and just saying, I feel this way. And that way also people around you know.
Right.
Like I've said to my class, like, I feel really frustrated because I'm talking and you guys are all talking over me.
Right.
And just saying that, communicate, they know what that means. They know how that feels, and they, theoretically would respond like, oh, empathetically, I don't like when I feel frustrated. So how can I, and it becomes this mutually understanding situation.
And those are the good days.
Yeah, that doesn't happen much, but that's the goal.
When they acknowledge your feelings and settle down, those are good days.
That's when I know I've made it. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't think we should be, owned by our feelings for sure. And I think the reaction part is the part that concerns me the most in our society. And we've all felt like quitting at times, right? I feel like quitting. There's I can't imagine anyone on the planet that has not had a day like that.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm ready to throw in the towel. Enough's enough. Okay, that's the way you feel, but do you react? Some people are going with it. Like, they are going to go through with that, and they're going to respond to those emotions or react with those emotions and not really thinking through, but what about what's next?
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah.
What then? And I think those are important questions to ask ourselves when you're about to react to something. Okay, but what's going to happen then? So if I know that I'm driving back in my old yard sale days, if I was going to say something snarky to my wife, what then? Then what's going to happen to me? Well, she's not going to talk to me for the next 2 hours. So one day I did say something snarky to her.
One day. Only once.
No, more than one. But on one day I did more than that. Let's clarify. So I said something snarky, and I'm like, well, I said one thing, I might as well say two.
Yeah.
So I threw another one out there. Yeah. That was not good. Like the next 3 hours, it was not totally not worth it. No, she doesn't say anything. It was like
just digging yourself deeper.
Exactly. Yeah. She says nothing, and it's real quiet. You're driving down the road, and it's super uncomfortable. Those feelings, and then I'm like, well, I shouldn't have said it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's what's going to happen then.
Yeah.
Well, if I do this and I react and I say this, then what?
Right.
Then what? Then what? Where's it heading?
Yeah.
And I think for all these things, when it comes to our emotions, our feelings, but where is it heading? And if I don't get control of this, whether it's, we're talking possibly resentment, bitterness, because anger is starting to crystallize within us, what's going to happen to all that stuff? Like, I can't allow, some of these things are not sustainable long term. And one thing you and I talked about kind of between the shows or before the shows was just that concept of you don't feel the same way forever.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? Just recognizing it's not like a lot of these emotions aren't forever.
Yeah, I think that brings a lot of peace when you're feeling an emotion that is not comfortable,
Right.
knowing that I don't have to feel this way. I'm not meant to be feeling this way. I'm not created to feel this way for a long period of time. Like we feel so many emotions in a day, and they're fleeting, and they're meant to be fleeting. But if we stay in them, if we respond, for example, to something and it just almost solidifies our anger.
Right.
And then we feel defensive and we feel like, oh, we're justified in that because they said this, and then it escalates, and then we're angry the whole rest of the day or the week or whatever. And you're not meant to feel that way, and you feel miserable because you're not meant to feel that way. And on the flip side, I know we talked about too, that's why we're never, when people are chasing this feeling of happiness, it's not sustainable. And so they're always left wanting more and the next thing, because happiness is not meant to be a feeling we feel all the time.
Well, right. And not an elation, like that sense of elation where you're just like, the feeling when your favorite football team wins the Super Bowl is not the way you're going to feel your entire life. It's at a moment of time you feel it. Or for me, if I found something really cool when I was a picker, I still am doing some of it, but man, if I find something cool, that is a great feeling.
Yeah.
It's not all of life.
No. Right. Yeah. And obviously you have the spirit of joy, hopefully, that you have throughout, even no matter what comes. You have this choosing joy, as James says, but that's more of like a characteristic. That's more of like a way of life. When you're walking in step with the Holy Spirit is the only way we really have that. But that feeling of happiness that we've all felt, it comes and it goes, just like that.
I mean, I think you're fortunate, and when it comes to joy, if you're naturally optimistic.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely makes it a lot easier because you just tend to see the positive, sunny side upside of different things. So it doesn't mean you don't get down or you don't get frustrated, but you tend to rebound quickly and say, oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
You just change your thinking and adjust. But I don't want to be owned. And in some ways, when I talk about it, I don't want to be owned by my feelings. I don't want to feel like I have to feel a certain way either. I don't have to feel a certain way when I come to church. I don't have to be on a high every day. I don't have to. I don't even have to feel like running to make myself run.
Yeah. Oh, I relate to that one.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I just have to do it. Like I have to force myself to go out the door whether I feel like it or not. So I don't want to be owned and only, if I feel like it, then I'll do it. Well, that's not good either. Or if you feel like, oh my goodness, something's wrong with me because I don't feel this certain way today. Yeah. Well, they're emotions. They're just their own thing. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, and I think that's when a lot of times when we give way for the Holy Spirit to intervene, when we're feeling weak, His power is perfected. And so there's been so many times where I've been coming to church to serve or to go to work or run, whatever it is. I'm like, oh, I do not want to do this. I'm so tired. I'd rather do this. Whatever. I need to get this done. And just acknowledging that and saying, I feel weak. I don't feel joyful. I don't feel the way that I feel like I should feel. Right. But God, you can still use me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And allowing yourself to be open to that. And when you acknowledge that, your spirit changes almost every single time. I mean, there's been so many times just with running, it's not like I'm like, oh, I'm loving it. But you do it and you're like, man, I'm glad I did that. Exactly. I feel good. I'm glad it's done. Or, I'm glad I made myself go to this event or whatever it is, because it was a good time. And I know God wanted me to do that and whatever.
I think most of us are there. There's plenty of things like we didn't really feel like doing. We're glad we did it once we did it, whether it's running or like you said, going somewhere or some kind of engagement that we had. It's like, I'd really like to just sit on the couch today.
Yeah. Honestly, sometimes you don't. There's been not every morning, I shouldn't say that, but some mornings when it's like, oh my goodness, I do not want to get out of bed. I'm so tired. It's going to be a long day. And I don't come home from work being like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. I feel amazing. It's like, oh, I feel drained just like I knew I would. But that's just life. You just have to do it. And there's going to be days like that. And there's going to be days where you're so thankful and you feel that way.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're not having an expectation that I have to feel a certain way
you're
about
realistic.
it, because you're going to exhaust yourself.
Yeah,
That's what I think.
It is what it is. And there's good days and there's bad days.
There's good days and bad. I love this verse in 1 Peter 2:23. When they hurled insults at Jesus, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. And that hurt. And the rejection, the pain, the ridicule that he was getting there, it would test any of our mettle. And for him not to retaliate was a choice. Mm-hmm. He chose not to. He chose to trust himself to God. He chose not to react or retaliate in any way. Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of wisdom there. Yeah. Sometimes even when you're upset, don't retaliate. Mm-hmm. Don't try to even the score. Because typically when you do, you regret it. And a lot of times you're the one that's looking bad. Yeah. Because you're the one that tried to even the score. No one even knew what the problem was. Yeah. But they did see what you did. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right. Yeah, I remember just hearing the story of the crucifixion, and that was the thing of all of the terrible things that they did to Jesus. That was the thing that stood out to me the most, because I was like, if I was in that position and I knew I could get off the cross and they were taunting me, telling me get down, I would be like, oh, you watch, and that's just my human pride. Obviously I'm not Jesus. Right. But the thing was that, yes, Jesus is God, but he surrendered. Right. He surrendered to that. And he knew, this is what I'm going to go through. It's not going to be pleasant. It's not going to be fun, but this is what I need to do. And out of love, he surrendered and to his Father's will. And I think in our own way, we need to do the same thing.
You do. And I think sometimes, obviously if we're in a cross, we might think, I've got some all-consuming fire for you, and you, and you. They're all going to be charcoal briquettes when it's all said and done. And that's not the way he rolled. You know what I'm saying? He legit, he didn't just say he forgave. They were still alive at the end of it. He really did forgive them and let it go. Yeah. When I was young, talking about controlling feelings and allowing feelings, there was a worship pastor, he was up front, and he said, if you go home today and your house is burned down and you're not happy about it, you're probably not saved. I never forgot it, because I thought to myself, what? If I go home and my house is burned down to the ground and I'm happy about it, they're going to think I did it. Mm-hmm. This seems like an incredibly terrible thing to tell other people. You should feel no sadness. You should feel no upset. Oh yeah. Family pictures burned, never going to see them again. Yeah. I'm super happy about this day. What is wrong with being able to feel sad? That's what I couldn't understand. I'm like, are Christians only have one gear? We can only be happy? You can't be sad?
Yeah, and then it creates that mentality of I can never show that I'm feeling sad or that I'm struggling with something or that something is upsetting me or whatever, because everyone thinks I'm supposed to be happy all the time, so I have to fake it. And then we feel so isolated and alone because we think nobody else feels this way. Everybody else has it all together. And it's just, it just gets worse and worse.
Right.
So.
But like you said, moments.
Yeah.
If you have that persistent depression, you need to go take care of that or figure that kind of stuff out too. Yeah. But a moment of, I'm just not thrilled and I'm not going to act it. I'm not a fake person. Mm-hmm. I'm not somebody who's going to go act a certain way. If I just don't like it, I just don't like it. Yeah. I don't feel like I have to pretend. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? It's hey, it is what it is, but always with kindness. Right. Yeah. Not saying that, but I've never been one of those who's just going to run and be gushy when I don't feel like being gushy. I don't feel like it. I think it's all why, if I did, I don't feel that it's real. Now, on the other hand, I remember telling Jerry when we were first dating, I said, tell her, the whole world doesn't need to know you're upset. Okay, we had a fight, we had a spat. The whole world doesn't need to know about it. We can be okay, when we get in front of other people. She actually told me, she said that was very helpful to me, because actually to realize, hey, there are times where you got to shut that off, even though if you're upset about something. If I have to do a funeral and I'm upset about it, as a close friend or something like that, there are times you got to put that aside to do what you need to do. Mm-hmm. Or if I'm upset about something or something's really rankled me, and sometimes this has happened in church, it's just somebody did something, I'm it bothered me. And it can be the smallest things. I remember years ago, I asked, could you please read this passage of scripture? Their attitude was you get in there? No, we're not going to. And I'm like, I don't get this. Like, why can't we just, and it bothered me for whatever reason on that day. I still had a job to do. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to get up there and you're going to know that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it would be fair to everyone else to have to worry about that. I remember when my dad died and people were like, oh, you don't even seem like you're upset. I'm like, it's not about me. I'm not here at church for me. I'm here to do what I need to do. And if I have a misty moment sitting in the front pew singing to him because I'm thinking about my dad, I'm certainly not going to get up here and tell you about it, because then that puts attention on me where I didn't really want the attention, to be honest. And I was just getting through it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't need you all to look at me over this. I felt like legit. No, right now you have a job to do. It's just like if you're upset about something happen, let's say your, God forbid, your dog dies. You know what I'm saying? You're upset about it, but what if you have to go teach that day? You know what I'm saying? It's hard. I know it's hard, but are there those times where we put it aside to do a function?
Yeah, well, I think, yes, for sure. But I also think, everyone responds to things differently. And if you're not a very, if you're more of an emotional person, that's more difficult to do. Or if that's, that's something that's going to tear somebody else down. Like, for example, you're talking about with you and Jerry having an issue or something in front of other people. Yeah, that makes everybody else feel awkward. That might embarrass her. That might embarrass you. And then it's like, well, that's not, that is not beneficial to anybody for us to deal with that. And
so there are times I've been dealing with my emotion, but still have to put on a game face. Because you have a job to do. You've got to do what you need to do, because you got to realize, hey, everything around me right now isn't about this. Like, this one thing that's happening in my life can't cloud the fact that I'm here and have a funeral to do, or a wedding to do, let's say today. You know what I'm saying? I got to put this aside for now, do this, not allow it to cloud me. And that's where I think you have to be in control of it too. Yeah.
And I think especially when it's something that's just kind of minor, obviously if there's some sort of trauma or something, that's a different issue. But if you have something that upset you, just focusing on somebody else and talking to somebody else, asking them how they're doing, focusing on them and whatever they're going through, or whether it's good or bad, just it helps you feel better, because you're not constantly thinking about yourself. And that's when we get into the woe is me, I had such a terrible day, because you just thought about yourself all day long. And if you just think outside of yourself, you really see, that it wasn't really that bad.
But that's the kind of stuff where it's just, there are times where I do have to control that. Like, I can't let my feelings get the best of me and lead me in the wrong direction, whether I have an outburst and hurt somebody. And I'm saying not even physically, just
with
saying,
words.
With words. And I think we all have those days of words that we wish we could get back, things because we were upset about something and it got the best of us. I think if you were attracted, you're married, you're attracted to somebody of the opposite sex, you gotta control that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just let that go to where it wants to go. You got to put controls on that. Right?
Yeah. And that's just being proactive over being reactive, and just planning, okay, these are the things that I know are temptations for me. What blockades am I going to put up so that doesn't happen? What things do I need to set in place? Boundaries that I need to set in place, or things that I need to fill my time with so I don't go into that. Or, if you tend to be quick to anger, okay, what kind of verses can I meditate on that when I do feel that anger, how can I respond proactively rather than reactively, and kind of undo those things? And all of that takes planning and preparation. And that first comes from knowing your own weaknesses and knowing the things that are not good.
I've never argued with people about their feelings, honestly. It's what you do with it. It's like temptation. I never tell people not to be tempted, but what do you do about it? What do you do, like you said, to avoid it? So whether it's a negative emotion or it's a temptation, and those two can ride close together, right?
Yeah.
It's just, okay, I get it. I'm not even going to argue with it. I get it. There's a certain feeling you have a certain way that's not taking you in a good direction, but what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And that's where I think that we have to be controlled. And I think also you have to evaluate expectations. In other words, sometimes I think people get upset because they have a certain expectation of, hey, I'm going to be invited to this place, or I'm going to get this pay raise, or I'm going to get this job. I remember my daughter, she interviewed for a job. It's like 9 people interviewing. She gets in the interview and they told her to create expectation. you are not getting this job. We just want you to know before we even start this interview, you're not going to get it. The reason we want you to do the interview is because you have a future in this company, and we want you to learn how to interview. And that's why you're here today. So know this, don't have any hopes that you're going to have it, because there's people way more qualified that are, and they're going to get the job. You're not. But we still wanted you to go through the process because we think you're going places in this company. That made her feel, it created an expectation that you're not going to get it, but it also complimented her. Yeah. To say, you know, we care about you. And by the way, she is moving up in the company right now, just had a job change from guard to, I don't even know what her position is called, to be honest with you. But but she just got it it's brand new. She just, cool. She's training for it right now. So I was excited for her. But to me, just, I have to evaluate my expectations of people, of maybe my value in somebody's eyes, right? Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, when we have these expectations and they're unmet, we tend to play the victim and say, oh, they don't like me. They think this about me. That's why they didn't invite me. Or I'm not good enough. That's why I didn't get this job, or whatever it is. And it's like, that might be true. And I mean, even if you go down the worst case scenario, okay, they don't like you. Right. Okay. Like what? Right. Okay. Life goes on. That's it. There's going to be people that don't like you, and just acknowledging that expectation and then just accepting it. I mean, again, you can't control all of those things. No. And the more involved in leadership you are, or anything like, I mean, the more chance there is to somebody's going to trip up on an expectation. The more people you know, the less people will like you. Well, you pick up enemies whether you like it or not. I mean, there certainly I have. And it's not that I liked it, but if I have to tell you, you really shouldn't cheat on your spouse and you're going to hate me for it, then you're going to hate me for it. And I can't do anything about it. I never like it. Like, I don't like it, but I just deal with it. And I think that's life. Yeah. A lot of things we don't like, we just have to deal with it. And that's where we've been over today of, hey, I'm not going to be owned by my feelings and emotions. I need to learn how to control it, because it says we're supposed to be slow to anger. It never says don't be angry. It does say in Ephesians 4, in your anger, do not sin. Yeah. It does say that. Yeah. So we understand we have to control it. And I think also just evaluating expectations. You know, what do I expect from people that maybe is causing negative emotions, right? Yeah, absolutely. And what do I expect from myself? Because sometimes we have these expectations on ourselves, even if we don't even acknowledge them. Right. But being honest about, what do I expect from other people, and what do I expect from myself? Right. What do I expect to have happen? And when we really realize, oh, that's kind of a high standard that I have for whatever, then reevaluate. Right. And it's going to cause a lot less reactive situations. Right. No, I agree. So again, think it through. The feelings are coming into the conscious world. That gives us an ability to think about it and really ponder, what do I want to say? What's going to happen if I say it? Yeah. What's going to be, and that sometimes we don't evaluate enough. We don't think enough. If you do, it can't be undone. It can't be undone. What's going to happen? Again, none of us are perfect. We're all human, and we all make mistakes. I'm going to give you that. I certainly have, but I want to be as wise about it as I possibly can. So I appreciate you coming in. Thank you. Yeah, and, good to be here. Cool, awesome. We appreciate you tuning in, and hope that you have an awesome and a blessed week.